And in the story of Naboth and his vineyard, we have King Ahab taking control over it, or his wife using his name to have Naboth killed and to take that property for the king, using that power, using that authority to cheat, to lie, to steal in effect, and to kill. And this is one of those issues that as often arises with governments. And one of the things that even throughout the Old Testament that is a concern of those Israelites, even as they are asking for a king, they're still seeking some assurances that that king will follow what is right. And so even here, part of the reason Ahab is upset is because he doesn't have the power on his own as king to simply seize the land of the people, or to seize their ancestral land. And his wife, Jezebel, is scoffing at him because she is not a Jew. She is not from the land there. She is from a neighboring nation, a neighboring country, and their kings are much more tyrants. And she says, "Is this how you rule over Israel?" And looks down on him for his lack of power, and then uses his name to cause the death of Naboth, to take his vineyard. Even in our gospel, that line that Jesus quotes, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, is from Exodus. It is given by Moses as part of the law of the people, and it's not a law for revenge. I think that's very important to remember. He's not talking about revenge here. It is meant as an instruction limiting government, limiting what government can do. To say if someone, again, harms you, you can't harm them more. If someone, again, knocks out a tooth, again, you can't take their life. And it is fundamentally expressing an equality that is meant to be shared amongst all people, that the wealthy person is not worth more than the poor person. If the wealthy person is harmed or burned or whatever, say, well, that's worth more than if that wealthy person harms or burns a poor person. No, it is saying fundamentally everyone is equal and all must be treated equally. The law given was meant to protect people and limit government and limit what those in power can do. And yet so often what happens is that those in power focus more on themselves. They gather more power to themselves, and things tend to slide in that direction. And that is exactly what happens in that first reading. When Jezebel writes to the people in Jezreel and tell them to proclaim a fast, this was a common thing that was done, especially when there was some calamity, some crisis, oftentimes a fast or a plague or something else. They would declare a fast. They would sacrifice, with some of that perhaps express understanding or belief that perhaps God was upset or that they had sinned, and this crisis or calamity was a result of that sin, and they were to fast and to turn back to God. And as part of that, then, they perhaps were looking for a scapegoat. What is the cause of this fast? What is the cause of this famine or whatever else that was occurring? And they bring up basically a scapegoat. They blame it on Naboth. Naboth cursed God and king. And that's why we are suffering. And that's why we've declared this fast. And if we put him to death, things will go back to normal. And this attitude is still very prevalent. One of our previous presidents had a chief of staff who very famously said, "Never let a crisis go to waste." and describes how when there is those crises, it is that opportunity to push for political advantage, to pass legislation and policies that would never have gotten passed otherwise. But because people are riled up or because of emotional responses, now we can push these things through and gain more power and more authority and more control. We are to be on guard against that. Again, and Jesus does remind us not only of the better law of the Old Testament, the eye for the eye, the tooth for the tooth, that is meant to limit that power of those in authority, but he gives us even still a better way, that way of love, which is far more effective and far more necessary for that true growth as a people, as a community, as a kingdom of God. We are to have that love, that compassion, and that love and that compassion is what must be fostered in the hearts of everyone, from the lowest to the greatest. That we might not live for ourselves, but that we might live for Christ. And when all of the people do that, from the leaders on down, that is the way things are meant to be. And this is, again, not an easy thing to accomplish. And he is speaking about an ideal. And we recognize we don't live yet in an ideal world. But he says we are to strive for that ideal. We are to seek love, radical love, as that one transformative power which can curtail the excess of sin and selfishness, greed, and all the rest. My brothers and sisters, today we are called to live in that love of Christ, to seek that radical love which changes hearts and which, in union with him, can change the world itself.